Good evening and welcome to the first episode of Watch Science. This is kind of a new project that we're putting together and we talked about this a couple weeks ago when I was here with Tim Masso, and we're starting to put the technology together to actually dissect watches, answer more questions, and bring people into the world of watchmaking. A couple weeks ago I asked about questions, people sending in questions, and the main thing, I want to build this around the viewership. I want to build it around the people and have them ask the questions that hopefully I can answer in a way that doesn't, last thing I want to do is talk down to anybody or talk over anybody's head. I want to bring it, talk to everybody like you're one of us. Help people explain what's going on inside the watches, why, and mainly that's the thing is why. Going into that, let's start with the first question. And the main question that I always get are automatic watches, and using winders. And I think the best way to explain using a winder or an automatic watch is to actually start profiling the components for the automatic. So if we could bring up the first slide on that. Let's see if there we are. What do we have here? We're looking at from left to right. We have three different versions of the automatic. And it's basically all the parts broken down. We have a 7750, which shows the reversing wheel. The little line above the reversing wheel is actually the click, and that's what's going to hold the power on your reversing wheel. You have a ratchet drive wheel, and then the top two are the bearing and the bearing nut. And that actually goes inside the oscillating weight, which is at the bottom. And those are the components in the basic 7750 and also in any real ETA brand. That's why I only broke down the 7750. To compare that, let's look to the middle, and this is the Rolex. Let's go back one slide, can we? Yeah, there we go. In the middle picture there is the Rolex 3130 series. And what we're showing are we have two reversing wheels, which is bidirectional. And it's a different system. It's a very smooth system, and this is one of the reasons with Rolex that when you wind the watch, they wind so smoothly. When you start to feel that grind, what the problem is, it's inside those two pink wheels, the two reversing wheels. They're actually anodized wheels, and there's little pawls inside there that hold everything together, and it's just a little ratcheting system. It's a bidirectional wind. It's a very, very smooth operation. It's very serviceable because those reversing wheels come apart, and we'll go into that a little further. The last picture to the right, that's the Zenith El Primero, and we have a very, very complex reversing wheel followed by just an oscillating weight, a ball bearing oscillating weight. Very simple design, but it uses a very, very, again, complex reversing wheel on there, which we'll get into a little further. Next slide. Here's the breakdown again. These are the reversing wheels themselves. The first picture of the 7750, and the reason I put the click on there, the click actually is what puts the pressure against the brass wheel to actually hold the tension on. On the 7750, that spring we'll lose that spring. That'll actually pop out of alignment. It'll wear down. The reversing wheel itself, either we have too much oil, we have not enough oil, the reversing wheel will hang up. These are the service problems that we have. You want to be able to wind the watch. You want it to wind smooth because that actually has to decouple. It's made to transmit the power from the oscillating weight down to the mainspring, but at the same time, it's made to also decouple. So when you wind the watch, you're not spinning the oscillating weight. So if you ever wind your watch, you feel a pulsation in your hand while you're winding it, then you have a bad reversing wheel. And the second one, the one in the middle, is a close-up of the Rolex. Again, it's a two-piece wheel instead of one piece. Makes it much more serviceable. They do have their own idiosyncrasies as far as what wears, and it's actually the anodized part that wears. On the flip side of that, we have they have little hinges, I guess you would call them, for the pawls attach. They'll actually elongate. That's when we know it's time to replace those. And then again, we have the most complex wheel, which is for the Zenith El Primero, which, to compare it to the click spring shown above the 7750, we have these two little click springs on each side of it. And it's a very, very, as this wheel, this compound wheel becomes dirty, these springs will actually start riding on top of the dirt. And so once it's cleaned, this is actually an adjustment we have to make to bring those pawls in and make sure they're making the proper contact. And again, the other picture is just the other side of the wheel, where you can see there's 2 pawls on each side of the wheel. It's just a very, very complex system. It's a very expensive part to change. And then for the people that are wondering about the Rolex 4030, which is El Primero based, Rolex didn't use this system. They used their own proprietary system for the reversers. And that's one thing, as much as I love the El Primero, and anyone knows that has watched me knows how much I love that El Primero, Rolex really fixed it with the automatic when they went ahead with the 4030. Let's go ahead to the next slide. Right there is that's the 7750, again, just completely broken down with the bearing out. You know, a lot of people see that when they look in the back of their exhibition watch, they see the oscillating weight. I don't think anybody really realizes how many components are inside the automatic itself, and that's one of the things that it's a lot of pieces that all have to work together in harmony. The piece in the middle that you're looking at, the little brass wheel, that's the ratchet driving wheel, and we talk about some of the faults with the 7750 because it's a single directional. When that watch is wound fully, that oscillating weight, that large oscillating weight can come back, and then that can actually break that wheel. So that's one of the things we check for service. And anytime we do an overhaul on a 7750, we're always sure to change that wheel, because even though it's working fine, that wheel could be 5 years, it could be 10 years old, and we can't be sure it's going to last another 5-10 years in between service, or that someone's going to have that watch serviced, you know, under normal intervals. So that's one of the parts we constantly change every time we do the overhaul, that and also the reverser, just because, again, even though it's functioning perfectly, there's a life expectancy to it before we run into problems with them. So we'll go ahead to the next slide. And here's the Rolex. Again, we have more parts. We have the oscillating weight, which does have the replaceable axle in the center. And at a later video, we're going to demonstrate exactly how we change that axle. There's no ball bearing in here. That's another reason it's quiet. You take the ball bearings out, you have less moving parts. It's a very smooth automatic. But I want to focus on the dual reversing wheels. There are 2 of them inside the movement. Anyone that's opened a Rolex up, you'll see that, or has seen the inside of a Rolex, you have the 2 reversing wheels sitting right next to each other. And those are the 2, you know, anodized wheels there. They sit in the automatic module itself. And one engages one way and one disengages. When the oscillating weight comes back the other way, the other one engages. So no matter what, it's all driving up that chain as it's shown, and it's just driving, putting power to that mainspring. Fantastic system, and the reason I really love it is because when you go to wind it, it's the smoothness of it, especially when you have a Rolex that's been properly serviced. You pick it up, you wind it, and nothing winds like a Rolex. They're just they're so well designed and so repairable. Whereas back in the ETA, they're replaceable components. In the Rolex, we service them. Next slide. And here's, again, the El Primero. These are the main components of the El Primero. There are other components down further in the chain, the ratchet, driving wheel, everything else. But my main focus on this is, besides the ball bearing and the oscillating weight, is that reversing wheel, that complex, multi-stacked, 4-prong reversing wheel. It's such a delicate piece in such a robust movement. That really needs a lot of care. It's got to be, we take those out, when we clean those, they have to be, just precisely adjusted under microscopic magnification, just to make sure they properly operate, and just the smoothness and everything. It's a good system. It's very, very complex because everything's into one wheel, and the wheel doesn't come apart, where the Rolex actually comes apart. And we can get in there and lubricate it properly with the Epilom treatment and the different oils we use on it that ensures we have a smooth wind. But those are the 3 basic breakdowns. Next, I've got a small video that I hope we could pull up. And this is actually going to show the difference. People ask about using winders. And this right here, this is a demonstration of if we could leave that up just for a second. There we go. This is a demonstration of a Rolex without power. And this is without power on it, and you could see the oscillating weight is just hanging, and that's what's actually powering the movement. And this is the test we do to make sure the oscillating weight is free. And we want that weight to sit almost immobile, and this is with no power. Okay, so it's actually winding the watch up right now. When we go to the second video, that's the one that's going to show you right here. This watch is at full power now. We're at the same angle, and you can see the oscillating weight doesn't even want to move. So when people are talking about should I use an automatic winder or not, you have your watch in the automatic winder, and you can just see the difference when the watch is at full power. It's hardly moving, but when it does move, it's putting so much more strain on all those automatic components. Rolex isn't the big one for as far as wear and tear. It's the other brands. I don't like to see this. I don't want to see, you know, on a wrist, that's fine. But what I want to focus on, though, is unless you're wearing your watches, there's no reason to keep it in an automatic, or keep it in a winder, to keep it at full power, because all you're doing is you're putting added stress on the components. That's good. And there we are. Okay. Again, you know, what I want to see, though, what I want to really stress on is, if you have an automatic winder, they're good for perpetual calendars. They're good for annual calendars because it keeps your calendar right. You could pick your watch up and put it on. Anything else, a three-hand chronograph, anything else, you're going to pick the watch up. It's better to let everything relax. Let that mainspring wind down. Let all the tension come down on all those wheels, on all those pinions, and let the watch just come to rest once in a while. When you pick it up, wind it up, and you're good to go. You're going to put a lot less strain on your automatic components because you're not straining them. You're not letting those components. And again, you know, I talk about this a lot on the shows. I wanted to be able to demonstrate this because this is one of the first questions I get. People walk into the office, you know, people write in and they ask, you know, what automatic winder do you recommend? None. So there's my 2 cents on that. You know, and I'm sure we'll address this again at some other time. And you know, like I say, I just want to encourage people to write in with questions, and we'll get to all the questions we can. Next segment I wanted to go into is we're actually going to do a quick teardown of a Patek Philippe caliber 177. This is an ultra thin, delicate movement. It's something fun. It's one of the movements that I enjoy working on. I've worked on this in various incarnations, the Omega 700, the Piaget, which is based off of Movado. I believe it was 99. They used it. Tim, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And it's just different movements. It's a beautiful movement to work with. So we've got a little new technology here, and so you know, bear with me on this, and we're going to give this a shot. So I'm going to try to talk over this. We're going to just do a little demonstration here as to, you know, just some of the precautions we have to take when we're from pulling the hands and how we protect the parts. Patek Philippe uses, these are blued steel hands. And again, blued steel, you don't want to ever touch them. There's no fingers that come in contact with any of the components. We take everything off. We protect them as well as we can. This is a very small movement. This thing, it's roughly the size of a nickel. It's a beautiful piece to work on. Again, being Côte de Genève seal, everything is finished to the highest specifications. The screws, everything. You know, you could excuse my head, you know, kind of popping in there. The camera was coming over my shoulder on this one. Again, it's a very small, delicate movement. We're taking out, these are the casing clamps that hold it into the casing ring for the Calatrava. Very nice, you know, well put together. Everything in this movement is it's made to be serviced. However, the service is very delicate. There's a few things I'll get into as we're tearing it down. A few of the components we'll get to that make it even more delicate, and especially when we come to the hairspring and the stud on it. Again, we pull out the stem. We're gonna take the dial off, and I'm just gonna go ahead and jump forward just a little hair right there. And we're taking out where are we at? Excuse. There we go. Okay. underneath the dial, this one, now most Geneva seal, this is one thing you won't see, is a dial washer. Now, whether or not this movement was actually serviced at some point or not, I'm not certain. The watch does have some age to it, so it could have been, but one of the hallmarks of Geneva seal is they don't use dial washers. Everything is fit so fine between the dial washer actually puts the pressure on the hour wheel itself to keep the hour wheel engaged with the minute wheel, just so the hands track together. So seeing that, that kind of makes me think this watch was serviced at some point. Again, it was serviced with that, it came out with it, so I'm going to check the fitment as the watch goes back together just to make sure everything is married together right and our clearances are correct. So I'm not going to discard this. I'm going to keep it just in case there's any kind of deviations in the dial, if the dial has a bow to it or anything. And this is our hour wheel coming off here, and that's exactly what it's called. It's an hour wheel. That's what your hour hand attaches to. So it makes very slow rotations. What we have is, let's see if I can pause here. We're actually going to pull. We're going to pull the cannon pinion off. And when you hear the cannon pinion, that's what actually the minute hand is attached to. So the cannon pinion is going to be levered off here in a second, and we're using protection on everything. We always have protection. And right here, this is the cannon pinion, and this is what your hour hand's attached to, or your minute hand's attached to. It's driven off the minute wheel, which is right next to it. And in watches, all we have is gearing. It's gearing from side to side, and it's just step down. Everything is step down from the mainspring all the way down. We have our time train. We have okay, we're flipped over a little bit. We fast forwarded here, and we're going to do a little bit of tear down on the movement itself. As you can see, we still have power on this watch. And one of the things I wanted to kind of focus on is, let's see if I can pause it here and get in here, right here. John Madden, I'm not. We'll pull in right here. It's a fixed stud hairspring. So this is one of the things when I talk about how delicate this watch is to adjust. It's most modern watches, we can pull them in a beat. We center the hairspring. Once the hairspring is centered, then we can move the stud to actually pull the watch in beat. This one, you actually have to pull the hairspring into beat. It does not have an adjustable stud on it. So it's a lot more delicate. It takes a lot more watchmaking to get something this thin and this fine just into perfect beat. And perfect beat is what we look for in any kind of high-grade timepiece. Again, this is being a very, very small watch. This is something that's also used in the 215. On the ratchet wheel here, the ratchet wheel is actually anchored down to the barrel arbor with 3 extremely tiny screws. And in the industry, we call these fly shit, because it's so small. They're so tiny, but they're still finished to the highest degree. All the parts on this watch are finished. You will see as far as the tear down, I'm inspecting things as I tear the watch down. You will see, right here I'm checking end shakes. I'm checking side play on the barrel arbor between the barrel bridge. And that's something very important. I'm checking for any kind of wear on this watch as it comes down, because this is not a new watch. This piece has been, it's been around for a while. It's been serviced quite a few times. And again, we're taking the balance cock off here. Everything is so delicate. We're going to lift, and we're just going to put this very delicately. And this is one thing too. Let me see if I can back up just for a second here. And this is something really interesting that you don't find this in many movements. There we are. And right here, the roller jewel is actually in the arms of the balance. And that just shows you how thin this movement is, where it doesn't even have, it has a roller, it has a safety roller, but it does not have the roller jewel is actually not in the roller itself. It's stuck into the balance. I've actually restaffed these in the Omega 700, and it's just so delicate. It's a fun movement to work on. Here we are checking end shakes as the watch comes down, so I know as I'm taking it apart what I have to focus on and what kind of adjustments I have to make as I'm putting it back together. One thing you don't see in this is I'm constantly taking the screwdrivers and adjusting the screwdriver fit for each screw. It's a little bit, I do it in between each one. Being Geneva seal especially, the screwdriver has to fit absolutely perfect into every slot. It can't be too wide, it can't fit too deep. We want a perfect fit to slide into the sides of that screw and bite the sides, not actually bottom out, because scratching the bottom of the screw is just not acceptable. This is your Swiss lever. Let's see if I can get a good shot of this here. And there we go. We have the Swiss lever is taken out. I'm inspecting the pallets for flatness. I'm inspecting the shellac that holds these stones in, just to make sure the shellac is intact, that nothing appears that it has moved. Any adjustments that have to be made there, we'll make that after the cleaning. And a lot of times we'll have to make depth adjustments just to regulate the amplitude, just to be able to bring amplitude back up in a watch, or reduce it. We have to check the drops and locks, and this is where the watchmaking comes in. This is where, it's not just taking apart, cleaning, putting back together. It's especially a watch, of this age, we have to check it because parts do move. These jewels move. They're under a lot of strain or under a lot of tension. Everything's constantly in motion. This is our escape wheel bridge, and this is a capped escape wheel bridge. So we have 2 jewels on that bridge. We actually have two jewels on the other side as well. And the reason they cap the jewels, it also reduces friction. It's just like in the balance. We have a jewel on the side, but it doesn't take all the tension on the side. It actually takes tension in the top of the pivots. And this is our bridge, train bridge. And again, I'm checking for the integrity of the jewels. I want to make sure none of the jewels are broken there. And I'm looking for also crustation, just for any kind of crust on there. If there's anything bad, we're going to go ahead and, let me see, we're going to come back just a second here. If there's any kind of crust, we're going to go ahead and clean that at the time that I'm taking it apart. I'm checking all these pivots. As I'm taking them apart, I'm pulling these wheels out, and I'm doing a visual inspection of the pivots themselves. And I want to know if there's any kind of abnormal wear on these pivots, if there's any kind of parts we have to replace. If there's anything questionable, we'll go ahead and run it through, but then I know I have a further evaluation to do once that watch is ready to go, once watch is ready to be reassembled. And again, my screwdriver fit here is just absolutely perfect, and everything is just being treated with the most delicate care as it comes apart. And again, this is just one of the tiniest movements that I enjoy working on. And this is the crown wheel, and this is what actually transmits. Let's see if I can pause this here a second. The crown wheel right here. This is what actually transmits the power from the stem. Let's see if I can do that. From the winding stem, the winding and setting stem, it transmits power. And again, this wheel will do a rotation, and it'll rotate and wind our barrel that's right in here. This is kind of working out, isn't it? So I love the technology. We're going to take the crown wheel out, and actually on this model, this was so thin that these crown wheel screws actually help attach the bridge down. So the crown wheel actually has to come apart. We have 2 components to the crown wheel. We have the core, and we actually have the crown wheel itself. And once those go into the cleaning, they're going to come apart, and everything's going to be re-lubricated as it goes back together. And we're going to lift off the barrel bridge here, and there's going to be quite a bit of inspection to this barrel bridge. I checked it originally. Let me see if I can. I was checking right here for wear. This whole area right in here, I want to make sure we had no side play, because especially this being a manual wind watch, where a lot of times we see wear is right there, right on this edge, because all the torsion is being pushed away. It's all the torsional force is being pushed in this direction, and if anything, if this barrel arbor is not perfectly polished, then we're going to have some wear, and it's just going to eat this barrel bridge away like a saw. It's just going to grind it away. So that was one of the things I was checking for side play. I'm checking the underside exactly the same. I want to make sure all the wear, everything is the same. Pulling the click spring out, because it's so tiny in this watch that we don't want to lose it. The click spring is one of the components I won't clean. I'll actually keep that with the hands on this particular movement. And here is our barrel itself, and this is a kind of a unique thing because it's an open barrel. Again, the watch is so thin that there is no cover on the barrel itself. And we're doing an inspection here. I'm actually going to disassemble that separately. I'm going to take the barrel apart separately, clean the mainspring, clean all the components, rewind that, and the mainspring itself will not go through the ultrasonic. That's just going to be kind of a wipe down component. And right now I'm also doing an inspection on the hairspring. I'm doing an inspection on the balance itself. I want to see if this balance is in the condition it should be. If anyone's ever played with it, if anyone's ever, I say played with it, that's if anyone's ever done bad things to it. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to pull the jewels out. And this is, especially on the Patek, the balance jewels are unbelievably delicate to pull out. The shock springs are so stiff. They like to come out. They don't like to cooperate very well. And this one is so unbelievably thin that it's, you know, I use a different set of tweezers, everything, to go ahead and take these apart. You know, actually somebody made a comment earlier today, why do I have, you know, my initials on my tools and my tweezers? And it's because I can feel them. I know what my tweezers are when I pick them up. And if anybody else uses them, you know, I'm not a happy camper on that. You know, so it's not a possession thing. It's more of a, you know, they're the tools I make a living with. And you'll see too, up here, even though I'm taking these jewels out, I'm using 2 tweezers to take them out, I have some components laid out. There's components that are not in the basket. And if I can, we have the escape wheel and we have the pallet. And these are going to be treated completely different. And we'll get to that in a second because they're so delicate, we don't want anything to happen to those components. And we'll see in a few minutes or a few seconds, I think, you know, exactly where they go. So, excuse my head leaning over there, but this is a very delicate operation here, trying to pull the jewels out and not scratch, not disturb anything. Some people just like to knock them out, or tap them out. I actually like to lift them out. It's just it's a little more delicate of procedure, and there they are right there. So those are the jewels. Those are the cap jewels for the balance itself, and they're very, very tiny. And we're actually pulling the setting out here. My head was in the way and I couldn't see that. So we're pulling the setting components out. When we do an overhaul, we tear everything down. The entire watch comes down as far as we can possibly do it, but to keep the watch and the components safe. We will put the barrel bridge back on. We will keep the balance in. There will not be any balance jewels, but all the setting components come out. This is the only way we can clean the parts, inspect them, and properly lubricate them, adjust them, and replace any worn parts. If we try to, there's no point in taking things the easy way and leaving them in. I know some watchmakers do that, and they figure, well, I can just lubricate around things. Yeah, you can do that, but that's not the right way to do it. And when it comes to a high-grade watch like this, or really any watch, I want things done the proper way. You know, I want to make sure everything is as clean as can be. And then exams you take, the watch has to come down all the way. There's no reason you shouldn't do that in daily practice. Now we're going to just go ahead and gently lay the components. Again, nothing's going to be touching in here. We're going to use a separated basket. Everything has its own compartment that it goes into. And the pallet and escape wheel especially is going to be treated differently. We have our little thimble. We're going to screw everything in, and I put all the components, all the screws, and all the jewels in there. And I've, you know, knock on wood, I always tell people, if you put the jewels in there and you lose them, then I'm okay with that. If you take them out and you put them anywhere else and you lose them, then I'm not okay with it. So these are the cleaning baskets. So the watch is actually being placed in the cleaning basket. And now we're going to go ahead and here we are. We're going to put the movement itself, and it's going to go by itself into a separate tray. And lastly, we're going to go ahead and put in the escape wheel. And again, the barrel's being put aside, and we're going to put the escape wheel in the pallet. These are the wafers. These are little, all the full industry uses them. It's a little plastic wafer that protects everything. We put the components in there. We actually use that as well to treat them with Epilam. Patek Philippe, you can treat with Epilam. You can not treat with Epilam. It doesn't, you know, they're not really. You can do either or on that now. If you work in Switzerland, you don't use Epilam. You know, that's pretty much the standard. And there we have it. That's the tear down of the 177. I know I made it look pretty simple. It's not a simple movement to work on. You can get into a lot of trouble really quick working on something that delicate. That's not your base 2892. The finishes, the fit, everything else in that watch is just precision. The components, when it goes back together beautifully, but it's such delicate work. The hairspring is so delicate on it. And again, centering the hairspring is half of it, because we want the hairspring, we want the balance to be just floating in the center of that jewel when the jewel's not there. But at the same time, we want the watch to be in beat. And the only way to put that in the beat is to physically move the hairspring collet on the stud. It's very, very delicate on a watch that thin. On an American pocket watch, it's easy. We used to do it all the time. Something this small, it's such a delicate piece. So there's our teardown of the Patek Philippe 177. We don't have the build back up of it yet. I actually did the build up the other day. Future episodes, we're going to have different components. We're going to focus on chronographs. We're going to do different teardowns of chronographs. We're going to show problems and adjustments with chronographs, with eccentrics. I'm going to try to do stuff in-house where we'll actually be able to take things out of adjustment and put them back in adjustment. And just to show, we're going to do timing. We're going to do. I'm going to pull watches into beat on the air. I'm going to try to do as much as I can. We're working with new technology here. It's everything is new. I can't believe what they put together this week, as compared to last week, for this first show. It's just been great. The videos, everything is going to be really exciting what we're going to be able to do, and just how interactive and how much more dynamic we're going to be able to make everything, as far as bringing the watchmaking experience to everybody. I want people to write in. I want people to write in with their questions, and I'll break them down. Where we're doing a 2-week segment, so that'll give me 2 weeks to put stuff together. Hopefully, I'll be able to put the videos together for you, and bring different stuff in, and answer questions. I'm new to this layout. I'm new to all this, and I don't even. To be completely honest, I don't even remember how to bring the chat box up to see what's going on here, because I usually had Tim Mossel sitting next to me doing that. But it's been a lot of fun though. And one other thing, I do know somebody wrote in today and they asked a question about RGM watches. At some point, I would love to get out and possibly do this with Tim at some point, and actually go out and visit Mr. Murphy and see his shop and see the watches he's making. As an American industry, I think it's very important that we emphasize and expand on American watchmaking and what American watchmaking means to us. Yes, the Swiss have been making watches, without separation, for the last couple hundred years. However, there's other watchmakers, there's other industries that we really need to focus on, and people doing stuff. And just to try to get out there and show the different ideas and the different philosophies there are. When you look at a watch from Switzerland and you look at a watch from Germany, there's 2 different philosophies. When you look at a watch from Germany to American watches, there's different philosophies. And it's just that's something we want to kind of share. They all do the same thing. They all tell time. They're all mechanical movements in the end, but we want to emphasize there's really no wrong way to do something. But there is a wrong way to do watchmaking, and there's a wrong way to do servicing. So always trust in your watchmaker. If he's not willing to talk to you, if he doesn't just drop the watch off and I'm going to fix it and I'll give you an estimate and this is what it is and I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing, that's probably not the watchmaker for you. It's just they talk about bedside manner with doctors. It's the same kind of thing when it comes to a watchmaker. Trust your watchmaker. If you like them, you stay with your watchmaker. If you have faith in them, if not, you find the one that does. I'm here. I make the joke that I'm more like a game show host than a watchmaker. It's because I don't mind sharing these experiences. I don't mind. I like sharing this, sharing the knowledge, sharing what I know, and by means I don't know it all. But I'm willing to learn, and that's the main thing. That's any watchmakers that come work for us. They have to be willing to share their ideas, share their findings, and be able to learn. So, with that, I'm going to ask, one more time for anybody to write in with questions, and I would love to. I look forward to in the future just being able to bring them out. Also, we have a new Instagram I'd like to throw out there too, and it's MRM_horologer. So if you want to follow that, we're going to be posting stuff up there, and thank you.